Success! Oh, hi. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad to be with you. Today, on a better day, I'm going to talk about the most impactful films on my life that were released in 2009. The year of my official divorce. Good times. I have to mention the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. In my previous video, 2008, I discussed The Dark Knight, and Heath Ledger's, of course, not only brilliant, but Oscar-winning performance in that film. I'm not one to speak, so take this how you will, but when knowing as little of the story that I do, I always blamed 3 people for Heath Ledger's death. 1, Heath Ledger for mixing medications. 2, whichever Olsen twin gave him some of those medications that were not prescribed to him. And 3, the director responsible for him getting the pneumonia in the first place, which is why he was mixing medications, being so sick. The Dark Knight was the final film that Heath Ledger completed. Before that, the film I'm Not Here. Is that the title? I think so. It was about Bob Dylan, and many different actors played Bob Dylan. Fascinating film. That was the last film he was able to go to attend a premiere of and see himself in the finished product. However, the final film he was working on at the time of his death was The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, which is an amazing film, a Terry Gilliam film, a film that features Tom Waits as the devil. Sold. And the way they were able to finish the film without Heath, they made it so that his particular character, which, given the story, they were able to do this, changed his appearance throughout the film. So they brought in Jude Law and Johnny Depp to play the same characters so that Heath could still appear in the parts of the movie that he did finish. There is a scene in that movie where he is hanging from a rope upside down outside from a bridge in the middle of the freezing cold night. That scene, the filming of that scene is what resulted in Heath Ledger's pneumonia. Hence, partial blame going to that director. He never would have gotten sick if they weren't under such harsh conditions for that particular filming evening. Anyway, however, no one's at fault. It was a tragedy. But that movie is actually Heath Ledger's final film, and it is a brilliant masterpiece that I highly recommend. The Proposal, I guess I'm just going to mention because I have memories of finally watching it when my son's mother was pregnant with him, maybe, and we were staying at the in-laws. And I was like, oh, it's Ryan Reynolds, that Canadian guy who married Scarlett Johansson. And oh, Sandra Bullock, I used to have a crush on her. She's still pretty cool. And the movie's actually pretty decent. So, I guess I'll mention it. X-Men Origins Wolverine. Here's talking about an impactful film. Huge X-Men fan my entire life, long before the movies. Loved the movies. Wolverine was always my favorite character. He's short, he's hairy, he speaks his mind, and he's Canadian. I mean, I'm not short, but all the rest applies. You slimy piece of worm-ridden gutter trash. Look that up. His insults in the animated series are phenomenal. Anyway, so when they were doing a Wolverine movie, I was very excited, and I remember seeing it with my brother, and we got through the opening credits, and we're like, this is going to be amazing. Look at all this stuff. They're going to go over him being in all the wars, and huh? And then, of course, the movie was garbage. We now know that apparently that was a result of the writer's strike at the time. Get ready for all your garbage content for the next little while this current writer's strike could last Lord knows how long. But boy, I will never forget being like, that's crap. and leaving a theater going, that was crap. Even though they had dude from Keamy from Lost playing the Blob. That movie had so much potential. And Dominic Monaghan from Lost. Anyway, that could have been a great movie. Let's bring in Ryan Reynolds to play Deadpool. Great idea. Then let's ruin the character of Deadpool. Aw. But then he now plays... It's a wonderful fairy tale story in the end. But at the time, it just sucked. Where the Wild Things Are, I'll mention, because that was a big deal of a kid's book growing up, and I vividly remembered that book, and I was like, they're making a movie? Oh, this will be great. It's alright. I remember finally buying it because I didn't get a chance to see it in theaters, and then I was like, oh, this is alright. Just read the book. The book does just fine. Whatever Works. Oh, Whatever Works is a movie directed by Woody Allen, one of my favorite Woody Allen films, because it stars Larry David. And yeah, Woody Allen plus Larry David is gold. I'll never forget, I do that when I wash my hands. Happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me, happy birthday dear Larry, happy birthday to me. Because he's OCD. And it also has Evan Rachel Wood. Yes, please. Great movie, though. Whatever Works, one of my favorite Woody Allen, probably my second favorite Woody Allen film behind anything else. Not anything else, but the film Anything Else. I discussed it in a previous video. I'm not going to look up what year it was. We're moving on. Inglourious Basterds. Of course. I think Kill Bill was the first one I saw in theaters, but I'll never forget seeing Inglourious Basterds in theaters with my brother. We were so pumped, and at the time, spoiler alert, no one had any clue that because we knew that it was about Nazis in this time period, but no one had any clue that he was going to change history, and that the movie was going to end with the murder of Hitler and getting to watch him get shot in the face 15 times. Like, experiencing that for the first time in the theater blew our minds. Not as much as Hitler's, but... Yeah, so we were like, you go, Quentin. And then it ends with, I think... The final line of that movie is Brad Pitt saying, I think this might just be my masterpiece. I do honestly believe that is Quentin Tarantino speaking to the world. I believe this might be my masterpiece. Which I believe it is. I believe that Inglourious Basterds still to this day is probably his best film. It's not my favorite of his at all, but any movie that has a memorable scene with eating can be a very important character in a scene when it's used right. And of course, that was our introduction to Christoph Waltz. Oh my gosh. Anywho, so great movie. I remember seeing it in theaters, and then I remember my brother, who was a drunk at the time, falling asleep and missing the end of the movie. And I was always, ugh. I don't know how you do that. Knowing I might have gotten mixed up with Next. I mentioned Next in a previous video because it had Nicolas Cage and it was something about like numbers or seeing the future or being warned by numbers or something. That might have been Knowing I was thinking of. It's one of the two, so I'll mention them both because they're both pretty forgettable. Moon. Moon is a movie, a science fiction movie, starring Sam Rockwell and Sam Rockwell. Okay? You heard me. You're not only getting Academy Award-winning Sam Rockwell, but you're getting two of them. And it is what I consider to be one of the greatest sci-fi films I've ever seen in my life, and it is probably my favorite sci-fi film of all time. Sam Rockwell is amazing in that film. You want to stick a gum? I'm the real Sam. I'm Sam Bell. Me. It's a great film about a guy on the moon all by himself, and then he rescues a guy who looks just like him. Things unfold from there. Look it up. Moon. Great movie with a wonderful philosophical, debatable ending. Oh, Terminator 4. Terminator 4, which was Salvation. I mentioned in a previous video that I loved Terminator 3. Yeah, that's right. I remember seeing the trailer for Terminator Salvation, and they use a particular remix of a particular Nine Inch Nails song that is so beautifully utilized in that particular trailer. Oh, it blew us away. My brother and I, who was living with me at the time, we were so excited, went to the mall where I currently work and saw this film as soon as we could. I believe it was one of those like midnight showings. So it was in the middle of the night. when we got home, and we were up all night on ecstasy of how amazing it was. Like, we loved that film. I mean, finally a Terminator movie taking place during the war. That's all they had to do. They had the 1, then they had 2, and then 3 did the great thing of actually bringing on Judgment Day. And then 4, now we're at the war. And I was like, sweet. You get to 5, and then you set up everything, and then you get to 6, and you get to the part where everybody gets sent in the past, and you have perfect beginning, end. But no, it tapered off after Salvation, unfortunately. Salvation, I believe, is the last good Terminator movie, and yes, I do believe Salvation is an excellent Terminator film. I love what was done with that movie from beginning to end. And the sound design was probably what my brother and I were bringing up the most. Certain particular sound effects that the robots made, like it was so cool. And then robot motorcycles, and like, love that movie. I love that movie. I love Terminator Salvation. Push. Ooh, Push was back when they did a bunch of just random superhero movies, and you'd be like, ooh, this is the next big thing. And we're like, oh, sweet. And it starred this guy who played the Human Torch in the Fantastic Four movies that I really liked. And I'm like, oh, this guy, he has a future as an action star in a franchise, because this Push movie's going to go somewhere. It bombed and never got a sequel, but I believe he ended up doing some kind of Marvel franchise after that. Something about being the America's captain or something. Anyway, so he's fine. But that was a really good movie, and I would have loved more. It was a great concept back then when it was original and unique and fresh. Now you make a movie like Push, and it's just more garbage we get plenty of every day. But I like Push. I think Push is a very underrated film. The way it's crafted and put together, given its subject matter, I think is very uniquely done. Year One. Year One. Great classic comedy. I remember the trailers being a big deal on the Super Bowl that year, and I was very excited to see it. I actually recently rewatched it. It doesn't hold up as well, but I still consider it an amazing comedy that I love. And it just, that's probably the last time anybody will ever get away with making fun of the Bible without being canceled or called out on Twitter or something. I remember when art could just be art, and then people didn't bitch about it offending them. Because art is subjective, and film is art. Anywho, Mr. Nobody. Oh, right, with Jared Leto, who was supposedly still going to star in Tron 3. Whatever, just make that damn movie. But Mr. Nobody, I remember seeing, and it was very overwhelming at the time and stuck with me for a while because of it. So I believe it's about we're in the future, and his character is the last person who's going to die because they've officially achieved a way for humans to live forever. But he's the last one that didn't get this particular treatment or isn't part of the wherever it started. I don't remember, but I just remember it's about him being the last person who's going to die, who's going to age and die of old age. I guess I should say die of old age. People still die, but anyway. Very fascinating film that is a wonderful, a good jumping off point for another philosophical conversation, which I love philosophical conversations. The only ones I have now are to myself. So chime in if you have any opinions. We'll talk. 9. Oh, the number 9. There's a Daniel Day-Lewis musical called Nine, N-I-N-E, that I would bring up, which I just did. Great film. Daniel Day-Lewis can sing. Anyway, but 9, the number 9, the animated film with the little puppet guys, that movie's a trip. The design on that movie alone is amazing. But then you get into the sick, twisted, deep, dark horror that is the story of 9. And I never would have expected that when watching that film. That is a pretty heavy, heavy movie. Yeah, that's definitely a parental guidance. Strongly suggested. Great film, though. 2012. The film 2012, that came out in 2009, was capitalizing on the fact that because the Mayan calendar ran out in 2012, on December 21st, I believe, 12/21/12, that's the day the world was supposed to end. So everyone was gearing for the world to end that day, just like we were gearing for it to end in the year 2000 and many, many times before and many times since. But because of the Mayan calendar, everyone thought the world was going to end in 2012, so they made a movie about it, which is, it's one of those Roland Emmerich, Independence Day, the day after tomorrow, Earth destruction movies. But I like that movie. I like the arc concept. Reminds me a lot of Deep Impact in a way. But 2012 is pretty good. But the thing is that later, 2012 had a much bigger meaning to me when it actually approached, and we were all like, here it comes! Because it was the year my son was born. So he would have been 7 months old, literally the day after his 7-month birthday. Would have been the day the world ended. But luckily it didn't, and I got to continue to raise my son. Welcome to the Land of the Lost. Yeah, I used to watch Land of the Lost, the television show, when I was a kid. I used to have Land of the Lost toys and action figures from the television show. So, watching the trailer for this during the 2009 Super Bowl, yeah, that's how impactful these movies were. I even remember seeing their trailers for the first time on a Super Bowl. I even remember what Super Bowl that was, because that was the last time my Steelers won the Super Bowl. And then Bruce Springsteen shoved his crotch in my face. Not in real life, but in the camera when I was watching the halftime show, and I was like, I'm out of here. Anyway, that's another story. But Land of the Lost, I was like, sweet, they're going to make a comedy based on my old this show I used to watch as a kid. I'm all for it. Loved it. Great comedy, classic comedy. Will Ferrell, Danny McBride, and then of course the lovely young lady whose name should be a household name by now, but I used to get her mixed up with Zooey Deschanel all the time, but now I know that Zooey Deschanel is like New Girl and She and Him. The one who's in Land of the Lost is the one that was in Pushing Daisies. Great show. Great movie. I love that movie. And then years later, after becoming an avid Lonely Island fan, I come to discover that one of the 3 members of the Lonely Island is who plays Chaco. Blew my mind. And it still blows my mind every time I watch that movie that that's him. It's obviously not Andy, and it's not the tall, skinny one that does the directing. Is that one Akiva? Or is the other one? It's the little one. He's great. The one who plays the DJ in Popstar. Anyway. Great movie. You believe in love after love. Classic. Alright, so now we can stop rambling, because there's only one movie left to discuss. I say discuss, it's just me talking and nobody's listening. I was looking at my analytics, not that it matters. Thank you for all of you who are subscribed. But like most people drop out in the first couple of minutes of my videos, which is understandably so. So if you are watching this, wow, let's discuss. Comment below. I'm still here. No, I'm not going to steal that from Jeeves. That's Jeeves' thing. You can kind of see them. There's one there. There's 2 there. I have another one on my fridge. One that's not hung up, and then one that was lost to building demolition. Watchmen. I had never read Watchmen. Zack Snyder's Watchmen. Okay, you with me? I'd never read Watchmen. I'd never, at the time of 2009, never read it, never heard of it, didn't know what it was. All I know is I saw that trailer. And it blew my freaking mind. I was like, what is this? I need to see this. Mainly thanks to both of Watchmen's trailers being 2 of the greatest trailers I've ever seen in my life. YouTube them right now. They're amazing. One of them features a song by Muse, which I believe is still to this day one of their best songs ever. I was hooked on that song after this trailer alone. It took me years to finally get that album because of that song, and only recently, like last year, did I finally go through their entire discography, and Muse is one of my favorite bands ever now. They're amazing. Anyway, it only took over a decade for me to finally realize, oh, that band that has that amazing song from that amazing trailer is actually an amazing band. Anyway, and then there was another, the Smashing Pumpkins song, The Beginning is the End is the Beginning, or The Beginning is the End is the Beginning. Anyway, that one I could only find on the Batman and Robin soundtrack. But there's two different versions, and the cool one in the trailer is the slower version. And these trailers were amazing, and they blew my mind. So I went with my brother and his girlfriend and a friend of mine who would then become my future fling or rebound from the marriage. You can watch the 30s video if you really want to know about that. Don't, though. And I was blown away by this movie. I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it. I had no reason to compare it to a graphic novel. I had no reason to complain about it. I had no reason to complain about them changing the ending. Since then, I have been an avid Watchmen fan. I own and have read on multiple occasions the original. I have read the prequel comics. And I also own and have read Doomsday Clock, which is the comic book sequel to the comic book Watchmen. And then the comic book sequel, the comic book also got a live action sequel with HBO's Watchmen show, which was an amazing masterpiece, and we all know that after all of its Emmy wins and whatnot. Like, that show is one of the greatest seasons of television ever produced, hands down, and a brilliant sequel to the story of Watchmen. But this movie, I think, is perfection. Yes, the director's cut is better, and the director's cut makes it so much better, and I would highly recommend, and I would never watch the theatrical again, but at the time I had no issue with the theatrical. The director's cut just gave me more. But so much more. I think I like the ending of the movie better than the ending of the graphic novel. I think incorporating Dr. Manhattan into the scheme of it all in the end is far more interesting and engaging and consequential than the extra-dimensional space squid. Even though that's what they go off of in the TV shows, whatever. The movie itself doesn't have an actual sequel, which is unfortunate. But to me, it's perfection. It's my favorite comic book movie. It's my favorite superhero movie. It's what I believe is the greatest adaptation of a graphic novel ever produced. Especially seeing everything behind the scenes. Like, Zack Snyder knew what he was doing. And it's an absolute masterpiece. The frames he takes from that graphic novel, the dialogue, the characters, the actors, everyone in that. But I was pointing these out. They were given out because we went to the Thursday night premiere late at midnight, and they had little posters, character posters, and they were handing one out to each person. But there was like 6 different character posters. My brother and I sent his girlfriend and said, "We need one of each. We need one of each." And I got all 6 character posters, and I still have them to this day, all but one. But ironically enough, the one I don't have anymore is Adrian, and he's the one character I don't like. And he was left behind when we had to abandon our movie theater for COVID. And then by the time COVID was over, they had closed the building, and I had never returned. So poster was never recovered, and building has since been demolished. But ironically enough, the quote on that poster is, "A world at peace, there had to be sacrifice." So that's pretty poetic if you ask me. But then you've got, there's the one with what's-her-face, "I'm used to going out at 3 a.m. and doing something stupid." Rorschach says, "The city's afraid of me. I've seen its true face," or something like that. And then there's the Night Owl one that says, "We were here." Let's find out. Come with me, won't you? Do I not have the Night Owl one up? Oh, I don't think I have the Night Owl one up either. Oh yeah, the comedians, can you hear me? The comedian says we're society's only protection. And Dr. Manhattan's says the existence of life is a highly overrated phenomenon. I couldn't agree with him more. That's one of my favorite quotes ever. Dr. Manhattan is my second favorite fictional character of all time. The only one above him is Darth Sidious, aka Palpatine. That's it, aka the Emperor. That's the only other character I like more than Dr. Manhattan. I can relate with Dr. Manhattan. Him being emotionless, him being numbed by the mundane life of knowing everything, of seeing your entire past and entire future simultaneously all the time. That's insane. His powers, seeing him go up against Superman, and if you're not familiar with Doomsday Clock, that is an amazing series, especially if you're a fan of Watchmen or DC or comics. But Dr. Manhattan is one of my favorite all-time characters, period. By far my favorite character in Watchmen. I love what they did with him in the HBO series. So there is that. I'm sure I'll go in further with my philosophical and social views in my upcoming Who I Am Now video that no one should watch. Trust me. So yeah, I'll further touch on things like why I could possibly agree with an absurd statement like that, but it's true. The existence of life is a highly overrated phenomenon. And in that video, I will prove that everything is meaningless, nothing matters, no one matters. I'll prove it. Anywho. That's 2009, though. Watchmen, I've seen that movie so many times. That sequence where you get Dr. Manhattan's origin with that song, with the organ and the chanting-esque choir, that whole sequence, especially in the director's cut, is probably the best chunk of film ever produced. Like, his narration, everything we get about his destruction to his putting himself together. I love that movie. Every time I watch it, no matter how many times, I eat it up with a spoon. And I have since consumed every single Watchmen media there has ever been, including the Black Freighter and the extended soundtrack and the extended film where you even get the Black Freighter stuff in the film as an animated thing. Yeah, oh, hey, look. Currently, he's celebrating Everything Everywhere All at Once, winning Best Picture, but this would be one of my... I've got a Dr. Manhattan action figure over there. I have Billy Crudup's autograph on a Dr. Manhattan picture up there. I have... Hey, while we're here, why not? Let's brag. Stand by. Look at this. That's the autograph. I also have an old photo of Dr. Manhattan in Vietnam. And then, of course, the photograph depicted from the film. His autograph's under there. Trust me. So yeah, Dr. Manhattan, second favorite fictional character, period, ever, for me. And I have always related to him. I've always been able to connect with him, and his wise words of wisdom has always gotten me through this mundane human existence that really is meaningless. Don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean it doesn't have meaning, or that you don't have meaning. I'll explain more thoroughly in an upcoming video, but in a nutshell, spoiler alert, suffice it to say, Joe Blow, who just dropped dead on the other side of the planet, means nothing to me. He means something to somebody. You take away all those people where you mean something to them and you don't mean something to anyone, then you don't mean anything. You have to give something meaning for it to be meaningful. So if you need someone to care about you for you to have purpose, not literally, I'll get into more detail later, then without anyone to know who we are, to care for us, to care about us, to miss us. We have no value, we have no meaning, we have no purpose, we mean nothing until you give us meaning. Like this. This means nothing to most people, which makes this meaningless. This is worthless. This has no purpose. But to me it does. To me it means a lot. Remove me from the equation, it's nothing again. I rest my case. Not really, we'll go into it further. Look out for the Who I Am Today video coming sometime this month. But don't watch it, because, man, that's really going to be the thing that alienates people. Because I've got opinions people ain't going to like. Why am I talking about it in this video? It's going to be things like why I don't like dogs. And my opinion on cars, racism. Yeah, I'm going to go there. Anyway, Watchmen. Who watches The Watchmen? I do. Often. Okie dokie.